Hi, I'm Jessie Chui of Crafted to Bloom, and I'm super excited to share with you my technique of how to create doublet crepe paper using 60-gram Carte Fini Italian crepe paper. So the thing I love about creating my own doublet crepe paper is I can do it all from home. Doublet crepe paper has two sides. One side is one color and the other side is another color. And Carte Fini has just these amazing colors to play with. So when I'm creating my doublet crepe paper, I choose any colors I want, I mix and match. Sometimes I even create crepe paper with two sides of the same color. So I'm going to show you two techniques. One using fusible webbing and the other using a spray adhesive. So there are two different types of fusible webbing that I like to use. The first one is Pellin Wonder Web, and Pellin Wonder Web comes in a roll like a piece of fabric. It's 20 inches wide, which is perfect for the 60 gram because the 60 gram is also 20 inches wide. The alternative is Heat and Bond, which is fusible webbing with paper backing. And the paper backing itself can be removed after one layer has been glued on. So there are two options. I love the Pellin Wonder Web when I am just using two large pieces of paper together. And the Heat and Bond is perfect when I am fusing smaller pieces of paper or strips of papers together because it's more of a two-step process and it's a little bit easier to control in terms of where the paper goes. To create the doublet crepe paper using the Pellin Wonder Web, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an iron. So the iron that I use is an old iron of mine. I don't use my regular iron, and that's because if the fusible webbing gets on the iron, it's going to ruin your iron and it's going to ruin your clothes. So try to use an old one. I'm also going to use parchment paper, and I like parchment paper because it protects my work surface, which is the ironing board, and it also protects my iron. And the last thing you need is, of course, an ironing board or something that protects your table and can withstand the heat. So in front of me, what I have is I've got two pieces of the 60-gram crepe paper. I've cut it to size. And I've got my piece of Pellin fusible webbing, which I've also cut to size. And the idea is to squish the Pellin Wonder Web fusible webbing in between the two pieces of crepe paper. So let me show you how. First, I have my parchment paper to protect my ironing board. And then I'm going to place one sheet of my crepe paper down. And then I'm going to place my Pellin Wonder Web fusible webbing on top. And I'm going to line it up so that the sides are aligned as much as possible to reduce the fusible webbing from squeezing out onto the side. And then I have my second piece of 60-gram crepe paper that I place on top. Now make sure that the grain lines of the top piece and the bottom piece are parallel and go the same direction, because after fusing the paper together, we want to use it. We want to use it like doublet crepe paper and be able to take advantage of the grains of this beautiful 60-gram crepe paper. So once I've aligned this, maybe I'll do this, seems to align a little bit better like this. Then I place my second piece of parchment paper on top. So I've placed it on top, and now I'm going to apply the heat using my iron. When you're applying heat to the parchment paper and the crepe paper, make sure that you're pressing. Now I have my iron on the highest setting, that is the 6th setting, and I put water in it. There's steam coming out, but you don't necessarily have to use a steam option. You can always remove the water and not use the steam at all, but my iron tends to get a lot hotter with the steam. So what I'm doing now is I'm pressing and moving the iron across my paper. How you want to move it, whether it's up or down, that's entirely up to you. The only thing I recommend is not to move the iron directly across the paper, because the last thing you want to do is to stretch the paper as you're bonding the crepe paper together. So if you're using a paper-backed fusible webbing, such as the Heat and Bond all you have to do is apply it to one side of the 60 gram crepe paper first, and then once you've applied it on top, all you have to do is peel the paper backing off and then put the other piece of crepe paper on top of the fusible webbing, and again iron it on. But there are instructions in the package if you need more information about that. So this is what you get. This is double-sided Doublette crepe paper. You see I have two sides, one purple, one pink, and they're both fused together so beautifully. I love creating my DIY Doublette crepe paper from my own, at my own house. I don't have to buy anything. I can choose whatever colors I want. The great thing about this paper is, check this out. You know, when I actually cup it, look at that. It retains its shape. I'm able to maximize on the characteristics of the 60 gram crepe paper, where it's very fine grains, but I can still cup it really nicely. I can still flute the paper really nicely, look at that. And I can still stretch cup it very nicely. And I absolutely love using this paper for my roses. And lately I've been using them for my ranunculuses as well. Because the other thing that fusing the crepe paper does together is not only does it allow you to have different colors on each side, but it also creates a much stiffer structure, and the stiffness is amazing. It holds the petals so much nicer than the single ply. So the 60 gram, which I love using for certain flowers, sometimes doesn't hold up very well when I'm using it for, let's say, roses. So with roses, using this kind of paper, you can see how this cup, it just stays like that. It doesn't droop, it doesn't wilt. It holds its structure amazingly well. And that's why I'm super excited to use my own Doublette crepe paper just by using fusible webbing that I can buy at a fabric store. The other way of creating Doublette crepe paper is by using a spray adhesive and the 60 gram crepe paper. So this time, instead of using fusible webbing, I'm using a spray adhesive. And the one that is my favorite right now is Elaine's Tacky Spray. And it's this one here. It works wonderfully well on the 60 gram crepe paper. It doesn't soak into the crepe paper, so it doesn't create wetness, and it dries very, very quickly. And with this one, I've used orange 60 gram crepe paper. And all I've done is I've cut a piece out, I folded it in half, I took this all outside. So I took it outside into my garage where it's well ventilated. I wore a mask, and I took my spray, I shook it according to the instructions of the can, and then I sprayed it on one side. I sprayed it on one side of this crepe paper, and then I folded it over so that the lines, again, the grain, is all aligned together, and then I just patted it down and waited for it to dry. And it's really, really effective as well. I mean, if you look at this, it's the same thing in terms of creating this beautiful cupping, beautiful fluting. It feels like butter. The other way of using it in terms of creating the doublet using the fusible webbing, it does the exact same thing, except that it requires an iron. I like both ways. I love the fusible webbing because it's easy. This though, spraying, sometimes you get the overspray and it's kind of messy, you need to wear a mask for this because it stinks. But the same thing, using 60 gram, look at the things that you can do with it. So I made Doublette crepe paper using two different colors, one color on each side, one purple and one pink. But you can also make Doublette crepe paper using the same color on both sides. And I love doing that when I want to create a stiffer petal, but I don't want two colors. For example, in my wild rose tutorial, I use a white crepe paper and I spray it with Design Master to create the color I want on both sides. So I hope you learned a new technique from me today. It's so exciting to be able to create your own Doublette crepe paper in your own home with your own materials and using the wonderful colors available in the 60 grams Italian crepe paper of Carte Fini. Make sure you join me as I teach you how to make a wild rose using homemade 60-gram Doublette crepe paper from Carte Fini.